We manage the stadium on behalf of the city of Johannesburg. It's 5 million a month to pay the expenses to the venues we manage. When you talk e-hailing and you talk fan experience, you talk Wi-Fi. To put in the infrastructure to get that venue Wi-Fi connected is 70.
My next guest on Behind the Boot with Super Journo is Bertie Grobbelaar, CEO of Stadium Management. He's looked after some iconic stadiums, FNB Stadium, Dobsonville Stadium, Orlando Stadium, just to mention a few. Mr. B, thanks for your time. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Boot with Super Journo. That would be myself. And I just want to start by obviously introducing you a little bit, man on the ground, hands on deck, a CEO of Stadium Management. Maybe let's start with your day to day, because for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, I see you almost every weekend. Even when I don't see you, we chat, ticket updates, this and that. But we've never had a deep conversation about the mechanisms and the dynamics of running a stadium, particularly in this instance, for the benefit of the show, a stadium iconic stadiums that are synonymous with football in our country, especially the Premier Soccer League.
Yeah, thanks, Mazola. It's always good to chat with you, and we're always on the run as we do. So sitting down and having this discussion is a privilege. I think at the start of the discussion, it's important to note that we manage the stadium on behalf of the city of Johannesburg. So as far as I know, the only private company in the country managing state-owned entities on behalf of the city. And our portfolio includes FNB Stadium, Orlando Stadium, Rand Stadium, and Dobsonville, those four. And part of our mandate is to commercialize these venues. And I think relevant to this discussion is to note that it's not solely football venues. To make it economically viable and financially viable, there needs to be it's used as a multi-purpose venue. On a day-to-day basis, and maybe just to start off, and I think there might be sometimes misconceptions, and my personality is to be hands on deck and to be there first and to be yes. Out there last.
Because people are, who's that guy who's with a walkie-talkie everywhere on the ground? That's why I'm saying hands on deck personality, so to speak. Yeah.
But coupled to that, and I think it's important to note as well, it's not a fact of micromanaging my staff. I've got really competent staff managing the different divisions in the business. And it's part of my personality, part of my management style to show care. And I want my people to know I'm there. If there's an issue, I'm a call away and I'm next to them. Somebody needs to hold the proverbial remote, to hold all the strings together. And that is my job. But they pull the strings down when it comes to facilities and operations. My job very much related to the commercial management of the venue, and then to oversee all of these other divisions from an executive perspective.
Yeah, and you speak of obviously making sure that the stadiums are commercially viable. We know, obviously I mentioned the iconic nature of these stadiums. A lot of them, obviously, or all of them involved in the 2010 World Cup in one way or the other, including Soccer City, FNB Stadium. That was the pinnacle of it all, hosting that final. And there have been question marks over the years about, will they turn into white elephants? How do you tackle that notion? I know we are a long way away from 2010, but the question does keep coming up. Hence, it's so key to mention that word financially viable.
Yes, and unfortunately or fortunately, you're dependent on other events. So we've got key stakeholders and key partners in the business. For example, with the concerts, we've got an agreement with Big Concerts where we try and bring 4 international acts to the FNB Stadium annually. Now, a second point on economical viability is the commercialization. There we're referring to naming rights, branding and advertising rights, the commercial portion of hospitality, suite owners. And this all these pieces needs to fit into the bigger picture. So Sale is our commercial partner. In terms of an agreement with them, they task and they've got the exclusive right to be our commercial agent at the venues we manage. And through all of this, you need to generate a constant income.
Yeah.
A simple thing, tours. We've embarked on a program and a project rather to start lifting up the tour experience. Currently, you come and you see the stadium, and we give you the history. But we want to enhance it on match day to have a special package. We want to utilize ex-players, ex-stars of the game to be involved in the tours. All of that generates income and adds to the, as we say, the financial viability. What you also need to take into account is take your home, your residence. These stadia are now into their 15th year after the World Cup. There's some deterioration and some infrastructure lasts for 10 years, 12 years. Yeah. So we're in that process now where we get a lot of failures. Big screen operating systems you need to replace. Yeah. And you can just imagine, we're not talking hundreds of rands or hundreds of thousands of rands. It's $1.5 million to replace the operating system of a big screen.
All at once, or just like parts of it, or
no? If there's a failure, it's all at once.
Yeah.
So that is why you say the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
That's why a preventative maintenance plan is so key to managing assets like this. If you wait for something to break, it's too late. And we currently embarking on a re-look at our preventative maintenance for the next 10 years. So that is a big ticket item, and a large portion of the management of the stadium is caring and looking after the facilities.
Wow, and some of us, Mr. B, wouldn't have thought about it this way, to think that in that 10, 15 year span that you talk about it's actually now that you are going into re-looking. Maybe you wonder about some failures, and if things don't go right or some things don't work, if we turn up for a match and then we busy on social media taking pictures, say, stadium management or the city, this is not working. But to your point, this is now the key area, and maintaining it, I suppose it's a long-term plan. How long do you envisage sort of maintaining those stadiums? And it's all of them, I suppose, all at once, because they were roughly renovated around the same time in the build up to the 2010 World Cup.
Exactly. So we've got a 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year plan in place now on a preventative maintenance scale. There's obviously your day-to-day maintenance, month-to-month, with the smaller ticket items, but the bigger ticket items we've got a long-term and phased preventative maintenance plan. And you also need to take into account, we're referring to the stadium itself now, the precinct, the challenges in and around the precincts around the venues. To give you an example, the pedestrian bridge that crosses the Soweto Highway, that's been condemned in 2018. Now, the ripple effect of that is, with events, we close down the Soweto Highway to allow for pedestrian crossing.
Correct.
So now you remove the Soweto Highway as a major feeding artery of the traffic from the plan. Now, the ripple effect of that is what we experience on big events. A contributory factor to what we experience on event days.
Major contributing factor at that,
So, and I'm happy to say, yes, over the last couple of months, the collaboration between the city entities and the stadium on addressing these issues. Yes, we've had a lot of meetings, and I'm very excited about the public-private partnerships that's going to come from this. I think as responsible citizens or as a responsible stadium management company, we also have a responsibility. So, for example, we've installed a lot of CCTV cameras in the precinct.
Yeah.
And we're saying to City Power, we're willing to share this with you and we're willing to assist in you monitoring the precinct for cable theft. So that will enable them to upgrade their infrastructure again.
Correct.
And that's the only way we're going to get longevity in this process. So I'm very excited about what's coming.
These stadiums, which one needs a little bit more tender love and care at the moment?
All of them, but the big one is the big brother. You need to, if you don't look after him, it spills down to the smaller brothers and sisters. Take for example Orlando Stadium. I think we embarked on a maintenance and cleanup process the last 4 months. But when you walk into that stadium, what you face is the state of the chairs. That chairs has been in there for, as we say, 12, 14 years. There's rust. And again, in engagement with the city, we currently, and we're far down the line to get a partner to pay for the replacement of the seats. And some people have got the misconception that it's a stadium management responsibility, the seats. It's not. It's a city asset. And we...
you help maintain it for the city. You look after it for the city, So in terms of trying to get this going, obviously you mentioned a plan of getting this right. I suppose the city is coming on board. You mentioned a lot of meetings behind the scenes. How are those going, and how long before we see it? Because we rock up there and we unaware almost. I remember even a few years back, or when Moroka Swallows were still in the top flight, and I arrived at Dobsonville and I took a picture and I took to social media and I said, what's going on here? Dirty seats or whatever, and I immediately got a response and an email from you about those kind of things, because at times we are unaware, but it helps that, and this is part of the reason for this podcast as well, to educate people about what's going on behind the scenes, especially when it relates to our football.
Just to give you an indication, to replace the seats at Orlando Stadium is 35 million rand to replace the seats.
Yeah. It's a what's the capacity, Mr. B?
36,000.
36,000.
Including the hospitality.
Including hospitality.
So it's not a thing that you click your fingers and it happens overnight. So there's a process that we engage in. Obviously the city's got their processes as well. But the relationship with the city and the management of this is a partnership. And I'm saying that confidently and with an open and honest mind. There's a stadium monitor appointed by the city. We meet on a monthly basis and sometimes weekly basis where there's issues, and the city is always willing to assist. And we need to take into account the city's also got a budget.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's other priorities in a city that comes before a stadium seats, for example.
Does it put pressure on you to accelerate this? I know it's not a click of the finger, but when a team is doing so well, I've never, in covering football since 2008, obviously there was that treble 2 seasons where Pirates won 2 trebles. And then after that, a bit of a lull period, the numbers were dwindling. But since Jose Ribeiro has come in, winning 5 trophies in 2.5 years, people are back. And you want people to feel like they are coming to an aesthetically pleasing environment as well. They're bringing kids, they're bringing their families along.
No, definitely. And it's not only, and I don't see it as pressure, I see it as a responsibility. We've got a responsibility to create that environment to the fans. And as you say, with the team performing well, and interesting you mentioning the children. I walk around the stadium with each and every event, and there's a massive increase, not only at Orlando Stadium, but at FNB as well, on the amount of families attending fixtures and kids. And that's good for the game. It's good for the PSL. It's good for the industry.
And on that, well, because I was going to touch on this later, but I think it's a nice segue to bring this up. Season tickets. People are asking questions, maybe out of not knowing, maybe poor marketing, poor advertising, whatever the case may be. Where are we in South African football in general, but obviously from a stadium management point of view, in collaboration with the clubs and all of that, where are we with season tickets? Because I know Maritzburg, before they were relegated, they were probably in my view, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the club that seemed, those Friday nights where they had Herigwala packed season tickets in and out. But maybe some of our clubs are trying. I know Cape Town City are doing some stuff. I've seen some promotions from Orlando Pirates as well, but I don't have the numbers. I don't have the figures. I don't know how well it's doing.
Yes, both in collaboration with the Stadia and with Stadium Management, both clubs, they embarked on a season ticket package. Kaizer Chiefs for the past 3 seasons and Orlando Pirates the last 2 seasons. And both clubs sold around 200 family season tickets for this season. So it is available, and maybe there is a discussion to be had on on marketing.
The marketing of it, yeah.
And following this, maybe a good discussion in meeting with the clubs again to say the feedback is that not everybody knows of it. So.
Yeah. Why would you think it's worthwhile for the clubs to embark on this and worthwhile for their supporters to be buying season tickets, sort of maybe securing the seats and, I suppose there are a lot of other factors why it's beneficial to have season tickets.
Yes, and convenient. The minute you increase that number, you can start looking at, for example, an access gate, because the season ticket entails a PVC card, and it's actually a nice looking memorabilia as well for you as a fan to keep. You can start looking at that. You can start looking at dedicated parking for season ticket holders. Take, for example, concessions. You can start looking at in-seat ordering. There's such a lot of advantages and benefits to the individual buying the ticket as well.
And then in terms of, we were talking about day-to-day planning for these stadiums. I'm going to take it back a little bit to when the season starts. Obviously we were still talking about the idea of white elephants and financial viability. At times, whether fairly or unfairly, you take criticism for the state of the pitch when the season starts. I suppose it's winter. Can you explain that a little bit? What goes into preparing for a new season to make sure that the stadiums are attractive, the fans are attracted, and speaking about season tickets, they see it beneficial and convenient to secure their tickets for the rest of the season. But when the cameras or we arrive there and the pitch needs a bit of work throughout, maybe having suffered during the off season as well.
Yes, and isn't that small margins? I said before the first game of the season at Orlando, we had that cold front during the off season, 2 of them, and that delayed the reinstatement and the maintenance process with a week. So I was so happy at the back of my office when the PSL season was delayed, and then we were hit by the first game of the what was that? The MTN 8.
Yes,
the MTN 8 Cup.
Yeah.
And when we had that discussion, and I think with some of you in the media as well, I said we're a week too late, and we never had any complaint about that pitch from the next game. Everybody came back and said, "Why?
Wow.
What miracle happened?"
Yes.
It's not a miracle.
Suddenly it looked lush and yeah.
It's not a miracle. It's sun, warmth, and a week late.
Yeah.
We were a week delayed in the winter season, and there's a misconception as well. You can't leave the pitch in the off season and just treat it by feeding it steroids.
Yeah.
You need to take out the thatch, they vertigrain. So there is a growth period needed where they reseed the pitch as well, even if it's a Kikuyu pitch. So that is a very technical and expert service that's provided to the stadiums by experts. So in fact, you need to do it in during the December period. You also need to go through the same exercise. But I'm so scared currently that so we do a limited amount of maintenance, and we plan this with the pitch maintenance companies as well.
And Mr. B, in these maintenance, I mean, how costly are these things? You know, because I suppose you can't really cut corners, of course. You know, but how much of a factor is do you bear in mind the cost of it? How much of planning goes into it to make sure that you are within budget? As you mentioned, the city has a budget. You as stadium management has to, be held accountable in terms of making sure that you meet the targets and so forth. But I can't imagine these things are cheap. Like you mentioned, I think you said 35 million. For seats,
for
seats, and I could imagine the cost of pitch maintenance on top of concerts now and again, major events, and then obviously football for a period of 8-9 months. And now we have international matches. Namibia, Lesotho, Zimbabwe also playing their games here in South Africa.
No, you spot on. And remember, we need to fund, we referring to stadium management, need to fund those monthly expenses and budget. We need to fund from events and from income generation via the other revenue streams that we just touched on. Now, let me give you a round number. I'm obviously can't disclose full details, and I hope you understand. But it's 5 million a month, rounded, to pay the expenses to the venues we manage.
Yeah.
Now, in the off season, if there's June, July, if you take my numbers as gospel, there's 10 million flowing out of the business without the cent coming in. Without the cent coming in from events. So that is why the other revenue streams are so important.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a misconception as well, and that is why interaction with the clubs are so important. Remember, clubs has got their sponsors. The venues has got their sponsors. And luckily there hasn't been a lot of conflicting sponsors, but when a club owns a venue, obviously all the branding and advertising is associated with the club and its club sponsors.
Yeah.
Now at some of the venues, you've got a sponsor and a major sponsor that's not associated with the club. And there needs to be an understanding and a balancing act between the clubs and us as management company as well.
Correct.
Because now a team plays in a venue, there's TV coverage and of a sponsor that's not associated to the club but to the venue. But without that, we won't be able to do what we do. And it's not only pitch maintenance, security. I said to you nowadays you can't manage and secure a venue only with static manpower.
No.
You need to go to the digital platforms and you need to have CCTV cameras. That has to be monitored. Cleaning. To clean these venues.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm jumping now, but it's something we're very proud of at Stadium Management is our engagement with the communities. Now, different to any other stadia in the country, because all of them got cleaning companies that do the cleaning. We've got 12 permanent cleaners at all the venues.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then we've got, in conjunction with the City of Joburg, as part of our CSI project, we've got a database of unemployed community members.
Yeah.
So before an event...
So you don't... Let me get this right. You're not necessarily outsourcing to a cleaning company.
No.
It's bringing in the community and getting them involved and hiring them on a permanent basis and sending them around the venues that you do look
Not
after?
a permanent basis.
Okay.
So we on event to event,
Oh,
and we
event to
pay
event.
them a fee event to event. So
Yeah.
we've got pre-event cleaners. On event day, we've got cleaners, and then post-event cleaners.
Yeah.
And my biggest kick on a Saturday after a derby is of the weekend of a derby is on a Sunday morning after church. I drive to FNB
Yeah.
and I take photos and I stand amazed.
That's your other church that you go to.
Yeah. How clean the venue is after a derby.
Yeah.
The amazing job the cleaners do. We've also expanded that now to the landscaping, and was always part of the formal agreement with the pitch maintenance company. We've got a local company with local people doing the maintenance. Another project, the mamas, the informal traders.
Yes.
Not many people know that as well. That's a revenue stream.
They suffered during COVID and the lockdown and the restrictions, Mr. B, big time. Yeah.
And but if you take other venues, that's a revenue stream. If you've got a concession company and a catering company providing the public concessions, they pay a rights fee to do that. At our venue, we said you can get the rights, but you're only getting 60% of it. 40% is reserved for the informal traders.
Yeah.
Whether that's a Chris Brown concert or whether that's a local derby, 40% is allocated to the informal traders. Some event organizers don't understand it,
They don't understand
but it's part of our agreement.
So you insist on this
it's a term of the agreement. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, great stuff. Cleaning is taken care of. The mamas, to a large degree, taken care of. I want to tap your brain on some security issues. I know you invited the South African Football Journalists Association. I was there as well, just to talk through some security measures that you are embarking on. And obviously there was a few weeks ago. I don't know how far along in that process. And obviously there were some big games coming up. Take me into your confidence with that, because we've, in a recent international match that included, that was Bafana out in Gqeberha, we saw pitch invasions, and then people were wondering now suddenly the deployment of more. Obviously, there were ramifications that Bafana could lose that game if there's invaders and the referee deems it's not safe. But how key is safety ahead of a big game of any category? You know, I know obviously there are scales. Maybe let's start there. Let's talk through the scales of the categories and what entails security deployment ahead of. Let's start with football. We can dive a little bit into concerts and what that looks like, but football.
I think the latter part of your question is the right way to start as an introduction. And people will arrive at the venue and they will see the sold out signs up, or they can't get tickets with the ticketing agent.
Yeah.
Then they will phone, they say, but on TV, half of the stadium is full. Somebody's lying. Now, in terms of the Safety at Sports and Recreational Events Act, that dictates the planning and execution of events in South Africa. You need to confirm a planned capacity to this committee. Now, I've heard people saying as well, but why don't you just say you plan for, if the stadium capacity is 36, why don't you plan for 36? It's not as easy as that, because if you plan for 36, you need to deploy resources as if you're going to have 36,000 people in the venue. Yeah. That entails medical, security. The numbers just increase. Yeah. The JMPD deployment is associated with the planned capacity. So it's a fine balancing act between generating income via ticket sales and the safe and secure planning of events. Especially, it's much easier if a team is not performing well, because then you can cap it at a certain level. But if a team is performing and they start winning, to gauge and judge that number it's a difficult exercise.
And you, sorry to cut you there, Mr. B, and you have a classic example this season where I know with Pirates, it started a little bit earlier on, where that capacity has been on the up and up for the last 2 seasons now. And Kaizer Chiefs, obviously with the changes, technical team, we've seen it. I know they've, up until now, obviously they would have had a game against Mamelodi Sundowns twice at FNB Stadium, but you're seeing those numbers. So it's a great gauge for you as well in terms of those numbers.
Yeah, maybe that's a good example to in the previous season, the Kaizer Chiefs Mamelodi Sundown fixture, the total capacity of attendance, including complimentary tickets and sold, is 22,800. So this season, early in the season, the club knew with the new coaching staff and technical team that there's going to be an increase in the number. So we initially started planning in this planning committee for 40,000. In the last week before that event, there were 3 emergency meetings with the planning committee to raise the capacity numbers. So from 22,800 as a historical number to a sold-out venue in 2 weeks. So with each of these meetings, there's plans that needs to be signed off and approved.
And just for the record, when we talk about sold out numbers, because we can get obviously the capacity, maybe you can explain that as well, because in terms of what's being, I'm trying to find the right word, what's being allowed as where it's been kept at, because FNB is 100,000 capacity stadium, but it's not always kept at that for safety and security reasons.
Yes, the again, in terms of this act, SASRIA Act, you need to obtain a grading certificate. And that's issued by the local authority. So actual seats at FNB Stadium is 94,000 odd. The safe capacity, and that is where the local authority, they allow for a safety margin, and also the layout of the venue, camera platforms. The safe capacity for FNB is 87,367, so 84,000. 88,000 is the safe capacity. Of that 88,000, you've got 8,000 hospitality tickets. So you need to deduct that. That's part of the capacity, but it's sold separately. So for the general public, you've got 78,000 rounded available to sell.
So let's go back to your conversation then about this planning committee projections about how to measure security and to get it better, because it is a major talking point, and I don't know, our people just seem to not be understanding how to help from their part as well. Because I know stadium management and the city of Joburg are doing a lot in their capacity to prevent these issues that keep creeping up every time there's a big soccer match.
Yes, and I want to add to the doing a lot. I want to add the clubs. They're really playing their part as well, and all the other stakeholders to this meetings. But I want to take it 2 steps back to the security at the entry point. Your trip and your travel to the venue. If you sit in traffic for 2 hours, it's an irritation and a frustration. And I think sometimes that contributes to behavioral issues as well. And I must say, when we get people inside the venue, the amount of issues we have is few and far between.
Mr. B, let's take it to that conversation about, it's chalk and cheese between what you see outside and once the fans, the spectators are inside the stadium.
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, that's my biggest frustration. And collectively, we need to find better ways to deal with it. Just going to inside the stadium. Once people arrive and we get them inside the stadium, I take the number of incidents. I mean, there's an event with a capacity of 90,000 people, and you've got 10 medical cases and somebody with a laceration and somebody drunk with a dislocated shoulder. Inside the environment, I'm proud of what we achieved there. I'm proud of the services that's provided and the security companies doing their job. But I think for a fan, it's a frustration to get in your car at home and you drive to the venue. And there, why I say collective effort, the fans need to play their role as well. And we've been saying this on how many platforms. You can't expect to leave your home an hour before kickoff and sit in your seat when the referee blows the whistle.
It's impossible.
It is impossible. What contributes to this is the lack of public transport. This venue for the World Cup was designed for the PRASA trains, park and ride systems, e-hailing. This is non-existent at the moment. Not non-existent, it's limited. And I'm happy to say that from a provincial government level, local government level, there's discussions with us to get the PRASA trains up and running again. The Ria Vaya, for example, this weekend is fully functional. We need to implement park and ride systems. And if we all contribute to this, it's going to be a smoother experience. Not seamless. It will never be. If you congregate 90,000 people in one venue, there's going to be issues. But we can make it a much better experience than it currently is. And this morning I said to someone, we can deploy 2,000 more JMPD officers. It's not going to help the problem. We need to ensure all of us that's involved in the execution, and we need to take responsibility. And there I'm saying stadium for their role, security for their role, JMPD, we need to ensure that we execute the plan. That's where it starts. But then the fans need to assist us. You will note now when you come to FNB with your next visit, that parking on the northern side, the Sherwold parking, with the approval of the city and JRA, we've got contractors in there at the moment. We're cleaning up that area, leveling it. There's construction equipment there because we want to enhance and increase the parking capacity. But I also want you, when you come to the venue for the first time, it mustn't look like you're entering a dumping site, because it looks like it at the moment. People dump at night. So again, the ripple effect, we've put up a CCTV camera. City Power said to us, in terms of our agreement, you can tap into the power for the camera system.
Yeah.
We said to them, you can monitor with us. So now we're going to put up fencing there. We're going to clear it up. So when you arrive there, it's not, I don't want to park my vehicle here, so let me look for another parking spot. You know, here I can park safe and secure. It will be managed. Lights. For this weekend, we've got 14 mobile LED light units. If you go back to your vehicle and it's pitch dark, I don't want to park there. And that is where we need to accept the responsibility and accountability, which I do, even though it's costing us money. But you can't weigh up the experience against money. You must always be reasonable, but you can't exclude the money from and putting in some investment in that. But then the plea again is with the fans, help us in this process.
So it feels like you are not able to sort of put your finger around, because you mentioned deploying more. Will that help? Will that not help? You know, obviously you've making great strides. But what more can be done to rid this culture of lateness, obviously, which it's a ripple effect, Mr. B. Delay kickoff, sponsors are unhappy, you know, your patrons are unhappy. Everybody is affected.
I don't think we're far off from finding a better solution. Let's try and dissect it. First of all, we need to improve the mode of getting to the venue. We need to give more options. So there has to be a park and ride system. It's going to be baby shoes and small in the beginning, but it's going to grow. The next thing is the PRASA trains. If that is functional, it's going to take a lot of vehicles off the road. Third thing, the pedestrian bridge we spoke about earlier. If we can open up that artery, you saw the drone footage I showed you
a few weeks ago. Yeah.
If that is open, you won't have that issue and that blockage. And again, there with the assistance of the city and government, we're very close to that. E-hailing. We in discussions now with all the e-hailing companies that operate from the venue. We want to create a zone for them. Currently, the zone is in the transport hub, but it's a struggle for them to get into that zone, especially after the match.
Yeah. And there has been some reports and issues, especially whether it's a football match or a concert. People try to use the e-hailing service, but they end up having to walk some distance and they get robbed or mugged or whatever the case may be. So there has to be a solution there as well.
It's good. I'll touch on that point just now as well. The e-hailing zone, the skid pad on the western side, right next to Golden Highway. And just yesterday, JRA gave them approval to generate alternative entry and exit points, going to clean that up, put up lights, and that people know this is the dedicated zone for e-hailing. So as far as traffic is concerned, I think I was not confident a year back. It felt like we hitting a brick wall. But over especially the last 4 months, and with the assistance and the input from government and provincial government stakeholders, I really feel confident that we're moving in the right direction. When you talk e-hailing and you talk fan experience, you talk Wi-Fi and connectivity. Now, again, we've and only if we're looking at Orlando as well, but only at FNB to put in the infrastructure to get that venue Wi-Fi connected is 72 million.
Once off.
The infrastructure to get the full venue.
The full venue.
So again, we decided on a phased approach. And the aim is 1 December with the National Prayer Day that will have the first phase functional. So we've decided on the embankment concourse and the lower concourse where you enter the gates, where the merchant services are. And we're going to have charging stations and the area where we say, you're going to be fully connected to order your Ubers and your e-hailing bolts and whatever.
Manage the distance of how far your connectivity can go into, which is why it's such a huge issue as well.
So it's still a huge amount of capex that we spend on that. But again, with my shoulders and the board, we said it's coming to the point where it's non-negotiable. You need to have some sort of connectivity. With a full capacity event relying on 5G and on, it falls over with each and every single event.
Every time I'm there for a full capacity game, I always tell either my producers or my family, once I'm inside FNB and I'm touchline, you won't get hold of me until the game is done, because I'm unable to connect. I have to go outside all the way up when you walk up the tunnel, maybe a little bit to the bathrooms, or even all the way out into the parking lot to have some connectivity of some kind.
So hopefully when I speak to you in the new year, you'll tell me it's better. So no,
I hope so, Mr.
That's a priority for us.
Yeah. It's a lot of money. I suppose it's with collaboration with partners and sponsors. I mean, you must be making a killing from the concerts then, because that's a lot of money to spend on something that's important, but we cannot play down the fact that it's a lot of money.
It is. And to find the balance to make the books balance, that is the thing, because obviously we're in the business to make money as well. We're not in the business to just cover expenses.
It's not a free for all,
But to find that balance is a challenge, and I must say a huge part of my day-to-day operations as the CEO.
One of the other challenges, I don't know if you will be pulling your hair out with this one, in terms of some clubs, they're quite some distance away in terms of building their own stadiums. I've heard club chairmen speak about partnering with the cities and trying to build their own stadium. What's your view on that as someone whose day-to-day operation is to be the caretaker, so to speak, of managing a venue? If clubs then move away and build their own stadium, is it something that you encourage, or is it something that's going to take business away from you and from the city? Or is it all sort of an ecosystem of some sort?
No, it's it's an ecosystem, and we're all part of the same ecosystem and in the same industry. So it's my remark is definitely not related to taking business away from us. And there might be other business models that's workable, but it's going to take a partner with a big purse to assist you in doing that, especially if you're going to utilize that venue solely for your club and your team to play matches. Because remember, the club will covers the expenses of the operational expenses as well. To run the club and that expenses together with the venue and the venue expenses. Not saying it's impossible. What I'm saying to you, if I won't do it, if I were in the shoes.
You need deep pockets for that to happen. Maybe let's go into that sort of running those operations, ticket sales there, and maybe it's another misconception. People always maybe call you or even call me, and I'm like, Mr. B, help me here. What's happening? The process of ticket sales, the partnerships. Some people blame the dwindling numbers to how the process is done. You go to a shop near you where a vendor that sells these tickets. Sometimes they don't find them. They don't sell it. It seems like it's a lot more difficult than it should be to buy a mere general PSL ticket. I understand, obviously, hospitality is a different approach altogether because of its very nature of being, a specific cluster of tickets, and then you have general tickets that, I don't know, it seems like it's a lot harder than it should be.
I agree with you in a sense, but then we need to look at the background and the options.
Yeah.
Let's say ticketing company A has got the option of a digital ticket that you buy online. It's got the option of a ticket that you buy at a distribution point. Now, if you buy a ticket online abroad, you print on an A4 your ticket and you scan it at the entry point with the barcode. So this was tested last season, beginning of last season. Now you get people arriving at the gate with 20 printed and copied A4 tickets. It's not the problem that they will get in with because it will only scan the barcode once.
Yeah.
But now you've got 19 people at the gates creating a problem. So it increased to the extent that a decision was made at none of the games A4 printed tickets allowed. So that is a solution to the problem, but we can't allow it from a safety and security perspective. Some of the ticketing agents got what we call the till slip tickets that you buy at the engine garage or the whatever garage.
Yeah.
Problem with that ticket, it fades. If it's in your pocket,
yes,
you can't scan it at the gates.
Yes.
And it's easy to counterfeit. So currently there's a discussion that none of those till slip tickets is going to be allowed from January 2025.
Yeah.
This is going to increase the problem. So we're in engagements with the ticketing agent that we involved with to increase the outlets and the distribution points where they can physically print the thermal ticket.
Yes.
That's not as easy to counterfeit.
Yeah.
So a lot of safety and security issues, related issues, compound the issue with tickets.
Yeah. So they all, it's all sort of what we've been talking about, a ripple effect. If something goes wrong here, it affects the very next thing. I suppose that is a good plan to sort of phase out the old system, but then you also have still challenges with maybe not everybody has a smartphone to be able to keep up with the times, so to speak.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to keep a hybrid for some time, but remove the till slip ticket and keep the thermal ticket and then a digital ticket on your phone. It's interesting. I've had a look at the numbers this morning. It's anything with matches, anything between 27 and 39% of the sales are digitally at the moment.
Yeah.
So there's a definite increase in the digital world.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will come
So
sooner than later as well.
more people catch up as well. In wanting to wrap this up now, Mr. B, I wanna just go back to the issue of just lastly security and explaining how to handle pitch invaders, because I don't know why for some reason we are still having some of these issues. I must be honest, I haven't seen it a lot at the venues that stadium management handle. Maybe it's at a teaching moment for some of your counterparts around the province to say, how does the stadium management get it right? Because everywhere else in the country, it seems to be a reoccurring issue now. Is it, spend a little bit more on security, or how do you do it better?
Yeah, let's start with FNB Stadium, where we do the security, and then at Orlando Stadium, where the club runs the security around the bowl. What we do differently, I don't know, maybe the others do it as well, but with the assistance of the clubs, we have club representatives and club marshals deployed amongst the crowd. So they will monitor and will very quickly give an indication, and they're undercover, that there's an issue brewing. And then we will deploy at that point. And then via the VOC, you'll also have POPs and SAPs deployed at certain areas. And then maybe again just me, you'll see all around the stadiums people with this cargo net. I've never seen that net avoiding or preventing anyone from getting to the pitch,
jumping over it. Yeah.
But it is limiting the security guard to react.
Yes.
So at our venues, you won't see that. The security guard is on his feet without anything in his hands, and he monitors and that he can react.
Not watching the match, but
facing the crowd.
It is an important issue, Mr. B, and I do hope it's one that we get right as a country as well, because as maybe the so-called traditional big clubs continue to do better, that means there's more attendance and bigger crowds, and it's something that we need to do right. Just in terms of anything else that you want to point out, as we've obviously just wrapped up some of the things that give you great joy in doing this job. It's sometimes it can be a thankless job, I suppose, because you are dealing with a lot of issues, and as human nature, people tend to look at the negatives rather than the positives that you've done in your tenure as a CEO of stadium management.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenging job, but it's extremely rewarding as well. That 10 o'clock on an evening after a full capacity event, and there were no major issues, and everyone is out safely, and you sit down and say, in collaboration with a number of role players, the governing body being the PSL, the clubs, city stakeholders, we pulled off an event, a safe and secure event. That's extremely rewarding. And there's not a lot of people that's got the privilege to say that you've hosted an event with 90,000 people. So I'm in a privileged position to be in that chair. And I'm very thankful and grateful that we managed the incidents thus far. In a way, some of it you don't even know. It's pretty much like a wedding. You don't know about the burnt meat in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But as long as the bride is happy, that is extremely rewarding.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are a lot of things that you've picked up on from the 2010 World Cup, be it 10, 15 years later, that you think that was a great idea and you are working on improving on it, or have improved on as well as you continue to manage the stadiums?
Yeah, remember I was still practicing law at the with the 2010 World Cup.
But watching with a keen eye.
But and going through the planning files of events back to 2010, and I think we've come a long way, and we've learned a lot of lessons, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. We'll never get it right 100%, never ever. But the aim is to always aim to get it right 100% and to work towards that. And it's easy when there's numerous role players to sit back and point fingers.
Yeah.
To give you an example, there's very few people that know who's the event organizer with different events. Let's just take a PSL Premiership fixture and a PSL Cup competition. With a Premiership fixture, it's the club that's the event organizer, and in some instances, that responsibility is contractually delegated to stadium management. So we step into the shoes of the club as the event organizer. With other events, it's solely the club, and we play the role as the venue authority. So we're responsible for the venue functionality. We've got nothing to do with safety and security. When it's the PSL event, again, there's a different model. Sometimes they will run it on their own, and we play a secondary role. In other instances, they will delegate some of this to us. Now, when you're in this environment, it's easy to sit down and say, "Oh, this what good, what went well. Thank you. We'll take the
We'll take some credit for that,
accolades." And no, it's stadium management. And when something goes wrong, to say, no, we've got nothing to do with this, unfortunately. And you'll never hear my team saying that, and you'll never hear me saying that. We're part of a collective with the governing body, whether it's a event organizer, a concert promoter, or it's a PSL or the clubs, SAPs. We jointly in this, and we need to accept joint responsibility. So I think that's part of the challenge, and I'm looking forward to, and it's a mission of mine, to increase the fan experience.
Mr. B, let's leave it there. Bertie Grobbelaar, CEO of Stadium Management. Thanks for joining us on Behind the Boot with Super Journal, and we look forward to more relationships, more conversations about things that are happening behind the scenes that a lot of people do not know about. Thank you once again, Mr. B.
Thank you, Mazola. It was an honor and a pleasure.